some of the largest, driving some of the most is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country. I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled. And then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important, and there you go.
It works, and it is important. It is important. It's important. Black eyes, the doll's eyes, doth not tread on me. Welcome to the Wake Up America show, guys. America's back. Cancellations back on the menu. Good morning. I'm your host, Austin Petersen, broadcasting live from the Heartland. My heart to yours. Coffee's strong. The facts are stronger. Liberty burns hotter than ever here. We've got a packed show. The kind of show that makes CNN producers wake up in a cold sweat and late night comedians, well, apparently unemployed. The clawed hand over. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jimmy Kimmel's been yanked off the air. ABC, Disney's sad excuse for a comedy factory, finally pulled the plug after Kimmel smeared Charlie Kirk just days after his assassination. Now, some are calling this censorship. Not me. I'll explain why I'm actually glad. And I'm going to tell you a little history, a story that you may not have heard. About Rudy Giuliani and how he had to strong arm cable companies just to get Fox News on the air back in the day. Now, if Giuliani could break the walls down for Fox, excuse me if I don't cry a river when Kimmel's free ride ends. That's our A1 segment today. I want my sex tonight. You're a user, Muhammad. Then A2 segment, which, do you care that I name my segments A1, A2, B1, B2? Just a funky little town on the side of the road. We'll get to B2 later. We're going to war with the black masked mob. There's so many contexts, like sub-jokes and sub-jokes and sub-jokes. We're at A2, we're going to war with the black masked mob. Yes! President Trump has officially designated Antifa a terrorist organization. That's right. No more pretending these people are just rowdy protesters. We're going to lay out how these groups have escalated from smashing Starbucks windows to assassinating conservatives, and why the funding networks, the NGOs, the CCP-linked tech bros, the academic radicals, they're finally on the radar. Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. Arrgh. Hour two, we're going to bring in the heavy hitters at 8 a.m. Camellia Peterson joins us to talk about what the Kimmel takedown means for culture, comedy, and the slow, pathetic death of late night television. And at 8:30 a.m., Matt Kibbe comes on to help us wrestle with a big question. When government labels Antifa terrorists, are we protecting liberty or are we endangering it? Can we draw the line between defending order and defending freedom? We're going to hash it out this morning with Matt Kibbe, which I don't think Matt Kibbe's been on this show today, so I'm looking forward to having him on for the first time. And then for our faithful listeners who like their politics with a side of satire, we've got breakfast theater, to be or not to be, on the show today. Now, you know how this works. Sometimes we get a governor, sometimes we get a pundit, sometimes we get a celebrity, a scholar. But today, folks, we have an exclusive here for you on the show. We reached out to the radical left, and after hours of negotiations, I can confirm one of Antifa's very own queer, trans, revolutionary activists has agreed to join the program today. But, and I'm not making this up, they only agreed on one condition, that we pay them $100 to cover their hormone replacement therapy if they wanted to be on the show today. So that's right. Even communists won't show up without a check. Karl Marx forgot to mention the part where the revolutionaries demand Venmo first. So buckle up. Today's show is a roller coaster from the death of late night to the declaration of war on Antifa to the radical leftist comedy hour that they didn't want you to hear. This is the Wake Up America show. I'm Austin Petersen. Let's get into it. So how do we have a radical, queer, trans, revolutionary Antifa person on the show? It's really simple. If you want to unlock the bonus content today, all you have to do is make a contribution, either in a Rumble rant on the show you're watching, where Darlene Guest has just joined us. Good morning, Darlene. Darlene. Oh, please don't take my man. Darlene, this is how our bonus content works. If we raise $75 on today's show, then I will play for you a little mini documentary instead of watching commercials whenever I go to my guests to bring the guests on the show in the second hour. However, I think the most fun thing to do is to visit what we call lovingly the Grift Shop. If you go to the Grift Shop, if you made a purchase over there, maybe you bought some of our delicious Founding Flavors coffee from the shop or something else, then those purchases add up to the total. Once we hit $75, that unlocks the bonus content. And then if we hit $100, that will pay for the hormone replacement therapy for the Antifa queer trans person who will be on the show today explaining how they feel about being designated as a terrorist. So BB for Liberty is getting it started. Says, I've never been so willing to pay to see a trans. Thank you, BB for Liberty. We appreciate that very much. $5 has started. The clock is ticking. It's time to talk about Jimmy Kimmel.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
Interesting. Jimmy Kimmel pulled off the air last night. He's been yanked off the air indefinitely by ABC. Disney's little clown prince of late night has been shown the trapdoor after he smeared Charlie Kirk just days after Charlie's murder. Now, ABC is saying, oh, no. He's not fired. He's preempted. But that's corporate PR for we'll see if America forgets in a week, right? But make no mistake, this is a monumental moment. A late night host, a man who was supposed to be untouchable because he said the right things for the right tribe, suddenly isn't bulletproof anymore. Thank you, Gemstar56. Yeah, I love seeing all these new names and faces in the chat. And thank you for your financial generosity, brother, starting that bonus content unlock. And I tell you, friends, here's the thing. I'm glad he got pulled. You heard me. I know that there are libertarians who are clutching their pearls right now. I'm sure that Camellia and Matt Kibbe that are going to be on the show in the second hour, they may take the opposite tack of me. That's good. Let's hear some more opinions. I won't suggest that they be canceled for it. This is a monumental moment. And I'm glad he got pulled. I know that people say my First Amendment, my free speech, but let's be real. This is not a free speech issue, and it never has been. Let me explain to you about the FCC. As someone who's worked as a professional television producer, this is my industry. Let me tell you about it. Now, some people are saying this is just the FCC cracking down. This is government censorship. Shame on me for celebrating it. People are saying, what happened to you, Austin? I'm guessing you just didn't know who the hell I was in the first place. Okay. Maybe it's time now you're figuring it out because you're all tuning into the Wake Up America show, aren't you? Who's this Austin Petersen guy? He's fabulous. Here's the dirty little secret. The media landscape has never been a free market. Every single one of these networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, even Fox, they live and they die on a government license. The FCC decides if you're worthy to broadcast. They decide if you're operating, quote, in the public interest. That's the system that the left built. And that system is coming back to bite them. So no, I don't buy the crocodile tears from Chuck Schumer about protecting democracy, right? This is the same guy who cheers when conservative voices are silenced on social media. AOC cheered, right? They all cheered. And here's our illustrious libertarians. Thank you to Jeremy Kaufman for the receipts. Here he says, Joe Jorgensen says, tell me how different the left and right are. She's not happy as the former libertarian presidential candidate, not happy about Jimmy Kimmel being pulled. Here she is praising a company for firing an employee for posting All Lives Matter on the employee's private Facebook page. Oh, interesting how so many libertarians always seem to side with the left. Why do they always seem to side with the left? I don't get it. It's amazing. They never side with the right. They always side with the left. But when it's time to side with the right, never sides with conservatives, never sides with the right. No, always. Interesting, right? Now, here's the thing. The left built the censorship machine. They built the weapon. Don't be surprised when it chops off your own hand. This is what's happening here is that the left has created a weapon and they've used that weapon against us. And now we're wrestling the weapon away from them. And now they're saying, oh, no fair, no fair, no fair. It's not fair. You can't use that weapon against us. Let's go back in time. Let me go back in time, right? Because history matters. Does anybody here know how Fox News got on the air? I love this story. I used to work at Fox Business from 2010 to 2012, and I learned all the interesting little secrets. Maybe not all of them, but ones that I can share with you. Some of the history of Fox News. Does anybody know how Fox News got on the air in the 1990s? They didn't politely ask Time Warner Cable, excuse me, can we please have a channel? And then they would get welcomed in. No. Right? Time Warner told Rupert Murdoch, forget it. They didn't want Fox. They didn't want competition to CNN. They didn't want another point of view. Okay. Enter Mayor Rudy Giuliani. And what did Rudy do? Rudy leaned on them. He threatened Time Warner's cable contracts. He used the weight of City Hall to make sure that Fox News could break through the wall of liberal media monopolies. And guess what? It worked. If Giuliani hadn't thrown some elbows, Fox News might have never become the powerhouse it did. Think about how different this country would be if we didn't have, at least for that period when legacy media was relevant, if you didn't have at least for the last, since the 1990s, last 30 years, at least some competition to the liberal consensus on our public airwaves, or the FCC licensed and regulated airways, Rudy Giuliani threw some bows. So when I hear people cry, but Austin, this is government meddling in media. This is how the game has always been played. The left was perfectly fine with this when Giuliani's strong arming, they were perfectly fine with this when it benefited them. But when Rudy Giuliani wanted to make it so that there would actually be some competition, then they weren't okay with it. Then all of a sudden it's a problem. So forgive me if I don't weep for Jimmy Kimmel. So So let me explain this to you here. So there are 0 people out there right now who oppose the Jimmy Kimmel firing, who are talking about government licensing for televisions, right? There's nobody out there who's saying, well, maybe we should consider that the FCC shouldn't be licensing television stations in the first place. No one is out there making that argument but me. So I'm going to make that argument right now for you, okay? In the absence of government licenses, Spectrum would be homesteaded or it would be auctioned off rather than cartelized as it is now. The government artificially enforces scarcity in the television market through licensing and enforces standards like requiring that these stations operate in the public interest. Okay, that's how it's always been. Now that these networks are walking dead, it would be better if we abolished licensing entirely, right, liberals? Then you don't have to worry about any kind of threat to free speech. You don't have to worry about Jimmy Kimmel being fired. No, you don't want that argument? Oh, you mean you want to keep the government control over this? Ah, I see. Okay, well, it's hard for me to feel sorry for you. It would be better if we abolished the licensing entirely. But if no one is going to make that argument, conservatives aren't making that argument. I don't even hear libertarians making this argument. Certainly the left is not making this argument. Nobody's listening to old Austin. So guess what? We're going to talk about a thing called the harm principle. Okay, we're going to talk about in a scenario where you have to make a harm. If by taking a step, you're either going to crush an ant or you're going to crush an endangered species, take the step that is less harmful. Don't crush the endangered species, crush the ant. There's more where they come from. Every step that you take will destroy something. As you walk through the field, right? You're going to crush an ant or you're going to crush an endangered species. Let's do the smaller harm. The smaller harm, in this case, the crushing of the ant would be the crushing of Jimmy Kimmel. It's a smaller harm for a greater good. And they have to operate in the public sphere. So who else is going to talk about why we should abolish television licensing on any show that you're going to watch today? Nowhere. You are not going to hear these arguments. You're not going to hear this history. You're not going to hear these stories anywhere else. So if you haven't already, please click the follow button on the Wake Up America show. Are you crazy? When there's humongous news like this and you're only going to hear these kinds of points of view on this show and they're going to be regurgitating the same crap on all the other shows, nobody else is going to be talking about this. That's why you watch the Wake Up America show 5 days a week. And please do click the like button. It does support us and we appreciate that very much. Ken Shiriorio. Let's not lose sight, though, of what Jimmy Kimmel actually said, right? Kimmy stood on national television and suggested that Tyler Robinson, the man who was accused of murdering Charlie Kirk, was aligned with Trump's MAGA movement. He smeared millions of Americans as complicit in a murder, and he was wrong. He lied. And therefore, I feel very strongly that liars on national public television, even if they purport themselves to be comedians, which I think is a dodge, to be quite honest, that lying is not in the public's interest. How does that sound? How is that? Your license says you have to operate in the public interest. You created that system, libs. Now, I just really hate all of the smearing of Charlie Kirk that's going on and all of the pissing all over his legacy that people are engaging in. People who were formerly friends of him now spinning lies and conspiracy theories. Charlie Kirk was a human being. He was a husband. He was a son. He was a friend of many of us. Days after his assassination, Kimmel used this moment. He didn't show any compassion at all, not even to stay silent. Instead, he chose to spit on his grave, right? That's not comedy. This is hatred dressed up as a monologue. And ABC knew it, and Nexstar knew it. Their affiliates said flat out, this doesn't reflect our communities, and we're not going to carry this. Right? And the FCC chairman put the knife on the table and said, Disney, cut Kimmel loose or we'll do it for you. And would I love to live in a world that the FCC didn't exist, didn't have this kind of power? I would love to live in that world. It's a small harm. It's a small harm. right? And the reactions, of course, are priceless. Trump celebrated. Great news for America. Right? He even joked that NBC should cancel Fallon and Seth Meyers while they're at it. But interestingly enough, here we have some looking at late night ratings. I wonder if the FCC, if it really even mattered. I can't help but wonder if ABC wasn't looking for an opportunity to do this anyway. Look at this. Nielsen Live ratings, Jimmy Kimmel Live, 10-11 to 24-25. Here we have these ratings just continue. For everybody's ratings are getting destroyed. Jimmy Kimmel Live, Late Show, The Tonight Show, just getting absolutely destroyed. Womp womp. Womp womp womp. Womp womp womp. But Chuck Schumer jumps in. He's crying about democracy. This is about protecting free speech. Oh, please. You know, where was that concern when MSNBC fired Matthew Dowd for his take on Kirk's killing? They didn't care about that. They didn't care about Matthew Dowd. Matthew Dowd the other day, he's gone. All right, or the Washington Post fired Karen Ataya for pointing out the racial double standards, right? Let's spare me the lecture, Chuck. It's always selective outrage. Bonchi over at Red State says ABC did not fire Kimmel because of a government threat. There's nothing they were going to do, and everyone knows it. ABC fired Kimmel because he was losing the network millions a year, and they needed a reason. Yes. And now, before you celebrate Jimmy Kimmel, guys, getting fired for saying vile things about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, remember, there are a lot of regular people who are employed by a show like that, bookers, writers, producers, and we're celebrating them getting fired too. Weenie David Frum says, trying to imagine the reaction if the Biden administration had demanded that Fox fire Greg Gutfeld because he wasn't sufficiently sad about the assault on Paul Pelosi. Does anybody remember Roseanne Barr getting fired because of her political opinions? Greg Gutfeld says, you're conflating intentional misinformation with an opinion, which is as dishonest as conflating David Frum with physically appealing and relevant. Oh, yeah. That's Greg Gutfeld. Oh, wait. I do want to show you that clip.
We have very real issues with what is permissible on air.
Media organizations or social media platforms should be accountable for the role for being platforms for incitement.
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend.
Thank you. Thank you, AOC. I'm just so glad that you've been out in public leading on those issues. Leading on these issues. Where else are you going to hear all of this stuff put together like this in a package? Only on the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Sorry, I know maybe I should just calm down a little bit, but I'm having an absolute blast. It's just, there's so many good things happening in the world. We're going to talk to Camellia Peterson at 8 a.m. Central about this story. We're going to talk to Matt Kibbe about this story and the Antifa, anti-fascist groups being labeled terrorist organizations. It's just, there's so much winning. We are back to winning again, and it feels fantastic. I feel good about it. How are you? Good morning, everyone except Jimmy Kimmel. What's up, Arvolt? Joni Rankin over the chat says that she misses Johnny Carson. I do too.
Do you get sensitive about the fact that people say he'll never take a serious controversy? Well, I have an answer to that. I said, now, tell me the last time that Jack Benny, Red Skelton, any comedian used his show to do serious issues. That's not what I'm there for. Can't they see that? But you're not. Why do they think that just because you have a Tonight Show that you must deal in serious issues? That's a danger. It's a real danger. Once you start that, you start to get that self-important feeling that what you say has great import. And, you know, strangely enough, you could use that show as a forum. You could sway people, and I don't think you should as an entertainer.
There we go. There's your Johnny Carson. You love to see it. Eric Erickson says, I think Brendan Carr is just the boogeyman that the left is blaming. In reality, Nexstar has 37 affiliates, most of them in conservative areas, and they can't sell late night because Kimmel has alienated Nexstar's audience. His needless cruelty on Monday gave Nexstar an opening. Excellent. Excellent. It's true. Like, you have to understand, most people don't really kind of understand how the television station works. All these local affiliates, right? They have to sell advertising. They have to sell local advertising. When you're watching television and you're seeing local ads that are on your television set, somebody has to go out there, and there isn't one. ABC News in New York City is not calling East Jesus, Idaho, and saying, you know, who are the local plumbers here that we need to get their commercials on air. There's people out there locally who are the local affiliates, and they sell the advertising for those television stations. Now, here's the thing, when they go out there in their communities and they're asking for money from the local plumbers, you know, the chop shops, the burger joints, whatever it is that they're trying to sell whoever it is they're trying to sell advertising to, the people who own those places are conservatives in large part. So they're saying, oh, well, where would you like here's where we're going to run your commercials. We're going to run your commercials for the mom and pop, you know, shop, the everybody knows the most conservative guy in town that has the MAGA flag in town. It's the richest guy in town. He runs the burger joint. Andy's got the, Andy's the dentist, the only dentist that we have in town. Right? We want him to run advertising. Oh, here's where your advertising is going to run. MAGA Man 2000 over on X with, 165,000 followers and an AI avatar profile, boomer guy, rich guy. Austin, get off of this. But the point is that those guys don't want to hear that their commercials are going to be running next to someone like Jimmy Kimmel. So you have to understand, this isn't just like the FCC says we're going to pull your licenses and then ABC jumps. That's not how it works. There is a whole litany of things that have to happen for something like Jimmy Kimmel to be pulled off the air in one fell swoop. And it wasn't because of the FCC. Do I wish I lived in a world where the FCC wasn't stepping in situations like these? Sure, I'd love to live in a utopia. We don't live in utopia. We live in a situation. We live in a flawed world, and we have to make the best of a bad hand that we are dealt every single day. And in this scenario, it is what we call a small harm. Here's what Scott Jennings over at CNN had to say.
You use the phrase propaganda, Professor, and I just have to ask you, what do you consider what Jimmy Kimmel was doing every night, or what Stephen Colbert was doing by having on only Democratic guests? Jimmy Kimmel Monday night flat lied about the shooter. Back in the spring, he egged his audience on in cheering on the violence against and wanting, kind of wishing, I think, the downfall of a publicly traded company, Tesla. Do you consider that to be propaganda? Is it good for a business?
Do you consider that to be free speech, Scott?
You use the phrase propaganda.
I'm asking you. You used the words free speech before. Do you consider that free speech?
I consider it to be speech, and he's obviously free to say it.
Will you defend that speech in this country that will defend to the death the speech of others? Will you defend Jimmy Kimmel's speech?
Do I defend Jimmy Kimmel going on television and saying that a shooter from the left...
You defend his right to do so.
He has a right to do so, but he does not have a right to have a television show where he lies his ass off to the American people and attacks half this country on a nightly basis.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. She loves me, yeah. She loves me, yeah. So, questions for the audience. It's time. Was pulling Kimmel censorship, or was it accountability in the system that the left built for themselves? And next question for you. Should conservatives fight fire with fire in the media war, or should we keep pretending there's some pristine marketplace of ideas when the other side has already rigged the market? I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the chat. Send us a text, 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586 is the text line. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that and more. Cecilia Each says, rainy days are the best days to listen to the Beatles, but with a love like that, you know I should be glad. Thank you, Cecilia. She's not breaking our heart. It's $15 raised towards the $75 and $100 bonus goal. Guys, you rock. Oh my goodness. We have raised $15 out of the $75 to $100 bonus content goal. Just want to remind you guys to keep making those Rumble rants, just like Cecilia did. Or my recommendation is you get like me and get a Doth Not Tread on Me t-shirt available at forlibertyshop.com. Dost thou have a frosty brew for us and my hearty mates? The Doth Not Tread on Me shirt available only at one place. That's the Griff Shop at forlibertyshop.com. The number 4libertyshop.com. You can see when you visit the Griff Shop, the For Liberty Shop at the very top. Latest product drops. Everything has to rhyme, I guess. If you click on that, you should be able to find the Doth Not Tread on Me, although it is starting to get buried because we got so much new stuff coming out all the time. The Doth Not Tread Gadsden Flag Renaissance shirt. Available exclusively at the Griff Shop. Make a good Halloween costume too. ForLibertyShop.com. While you're there, visit all the great stuff. Any of the Charlie Kirk related merchandise, the profits get donated to Turning Point USA. So check those out as well. Thank you very much. Let's get that bonus content unlock rolling. What do you say, guys? Do you want to see the mini documentary today? I know you'll do. So do that or do Rumble Rants. Okay. So here's where this gets bigger. This story, the Jimmy Kimmel story, right? If you think Jimmy Kimmel finally getting his consequences is a shock, wait until you hear what's happened next. President Trump has officially designated Antifa as a terrorist organization. That's right. The black masked thugs who have burned our cities, terrorized our citizens, and assaulted our police are finally being treated as what they are. They're domestic terrorists. So hold on to your coffee mugs, guys, because if Jimmy Kimmel finally getting benched was the appetizer, then, boy, this is the main course. President Donald Trump has officially labeled Antifa a major terrorist organization. That's right. After years of pretending that these black masked thugs were these arsonists were protesters, Washington has finally called them what they are, domestic terrorists. Oh, you guys, you wanted the Doth Not Tread, I see. Plus 31. We sold one Doth Not Tread. Maybe did we sell two Doth Not Tread? Let's see. Oh, wow. Ruby. Oh, the Don't Tread on Me. That's what they wanted. Thank you. Wow, that's pretty good. Give me just 1 second to do some quick math, guys. 28 here. I'm going to make Brad start doing this soon. Wow, we're $74 out of 75, guys. One more dollar will unlock the first phase of the bonus content. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate that. Everybody who went to the shop this morning, grateful. Gracias. We appreciate you guys. Donald Trump labels Antifa a violent terrorist organization. You love to see it. I'm trying to find... Here we go. Inside violent anarchist group Antifa from 8 years ago. Guess what network this was on?
Welcome back to The Lead, the national lead now. By most accounts, almost all of the people protesting against the hateful bigots, the Nazis and Klansmen in Charlottesville, were peaceful, but not all of them. In their midst was a sometimes very violent group of protesters that call themselves Antifa, known to not only clash with bigots, but also sometimes with police and occasionally storefronts. At least 2 journalists in Virginia were assaulted by violent counter-protesters over the weekend, including this cameraman from the Richmond CBS affiliate. CNN's Sarah Ganim now takes us inside Antifa and shows us this group like you've never seen it before.
It's 6 a.m. in Portland, Oregon.
I've been to a lot of protests. You go to a protest, you're going to see these kind of people walking around on the fringes, and they are always there ready to start trouble and cause violence.
And we're headed to a bar with blacked out windows.
They wanted to meet us really early in the morning because they're concerned about a lot of people being around.
We are meeting members of the Rose City Antifa, short for anti-fascist. This group's main goal is to disrupt neo-Nazis and white supremacists, but also take on government and capitalism.
Antifa is
any group that's willing to stand up against fascists by any means necessary.
By any means necessary, they say, can mean outing a white nationalist at their work or to their neighbors. Or, as we've seen recently, violence, fires, property damage, hand-to-hand combat at protests across the country.
Explain to me the reasoning behind fighting.
You have to make it so unpalatable to be doing white supremacist organizing that they no longer want to do that. And historically, that's what's worked. You have to put your body in the way, and you have to make it speak in a language that they understand, and sometimes that is violence.
There you go.
There's no firm number on how many Antifa activists there.
Get them. Round them up. Thank you guys. You unlocked the bonus content all because everybody wanted to get a Doth Not Tread on me. I can't wait to see all the pictures of you guys with your shirts. We can all wear them together to get one day. We'll go to Oktoberfest and wear them. What do you say, guys? Everybody want to go to Herman? Here's what President Trump posted on Truth Social. I'm pleased to inform many USA patriots, that is all of you people here listening to us on the show, I'm designating Antifa a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster as a major terrorist organization. I love that he calls them sick. Can you imagine if we hadn't elected Donald Trump? Listen, I don't agree with tariffs. I don't agree with some of the stuff that comes out of the White House, here and there. But the fact remains is that the world would be a worse place if Kamala Harris were president of the United States. Are we not better off? Are we tired of winning? I'm not. And he didn't stop there. And here's where it really matters, because should we go after the people who are committing violent acts, advocating for violence? Should we go after these street thugs and activists and round them up? Yes. Should we go after the people who are funding Antifa? Also, yes. And this isn't just about the skinny kids in jeans, lighting Molotov cocktails. This is about following the money. Who's cutting the checks? Because these socialists don't have jobs. How are they affording the Molotov cocktails? That stuff's expensive. Who's laundering cash into these groups? Who's protecting them in academia? Who's protecting them in the nonprofits? Who's running political campaigns that their street activists are out there acting nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We're not really with you, AOC. She's not radical enough for us, right? And this is a humongous win for liberty and for libertarians. I don't care what anybody says. This is a big win for liberty in the United States. All of this comes on the heels of Charlie Kirk's assassination, where we're now learning about the radical groups that are connected to the alleged killer, Tyler Robinson. And now that we've unlocked the bonus content, thanks to all your purchases, guys, we are going to have a queer, trans, Antifa leftist on the Wake Up America show today, because now we can afford to pay they demanded that we pay for their hormone replacement therapy. So we'll give them that, and then they will be on the show today. So the New York Post is reporting that the FBI is investigating armed queers Salt Lake City. That's a radical trans group founded by a woman named Ermia Fanayan. She's a self-described communist who has been celebrated by Elizabeth Warren, funded by NGOs, and was even given an award by a group that was backed by the State Department, right? So investigate, right? So this is the same person that has preached sometimes violence, riots, rebellions. They must take place for tangible change. If that sounds familiar, that is Antifa's playbook, what we were just listening to a moment, right?
They are in the U.S. because there isn't any one organization. Most are local groups that recruit and communicate through social media. But experts who track these organizations say their membership is growing in response to the rise of white national groups and the election of President Donald Trump. Violence and property destruction led to more than 200 arrests in Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day. Prosecutors say they were wearing masks covered head to toe in black, a tactic the Antifa call Black Bloc.
People dress in Black Bloc for a few things. One,
Scott Crow has been leading anarchist and militant leftist groups for decades.
So people put on the masks so that we can all become anonymous. And then therefore we are able to move more freely and do what we need to do, whether it is illegal.
I debated him once, Scott Crow. I did a television debate with that guy. Yeah, he's the peaceful sounding, hippie sounding guy that masks the violence underneath.
Or not.
So some people will push back on that and say that the black bloc is to keep people from being identified and arrested when they break the law, when they commit crime.
Damn right. Yeah. It's a good way to avoid the ramifications of law enforcement.
There you go. What have I been saying? I've been saying it for years. Me and my buddies. God, damn, this is such a beautiful day. And thank you, Gemstar. It looks like you got gifted a sub, so thank you, Frickety. And thanks for buying the shirt from the shop. I hope that your hubby enjoys it. Doth not tread on me. Everybody's going to be wearing it this fall. It's going to be great. But, I mean, I've lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for a number of years. I've been to many protests. I've gone to many events. I've organized many protests, usually against the Federal Reserve. But I went to Occupy Wall Street. These people were always violent. Me and my buddies, like the libertarian cadre, we'll call them the Circle Bastiat, around AP. We always knew that these guys were wicked dangerous, that these violent communists were, by the technical definition, literal terrorists. And we always would say to ourselves in the Circle Bastiat that this country is going to go to hell if we don't attack the sickness, the cancer, where it exists. Attack the actual cancer and cut it out. That's these people. These people, it's not a free speech issue. They're committing violent terrorist acts. They say that they're going to commit violent terrorist acts. And this Tyler Robinson, who assassinated Charlie Kirk, was connected to this group where this quote unquote woman, praised by Elizabeth Warren, given an award from the State Department, right, receives funding through NGOs. That's where are these NGOs getting their money? Right, that's you. You're funding this shit. It's time to shut these fuckers down. It's time to shut them down.
Firsthand at a May Day protest in New York City.
We cover our face because the Nazis will try to find out who we are. And that is a very bad thing because they harass people. When they organize, they kill people, they hurt people, they fight people. And we're the ones who are fighting back. They are the second coming of Hitler.
Police in Berkeley told us they haven't seen this kind of destruction since the 1960s. Law enforcement in other cities are dealing with similar situations, like in Portland, Oregon, where Antifa have been involved in at least 10 protests ending in violence, according to police. And it's wearing on the community.
It is new. It's like this rumble mentality of I'm going to bring my friends, you bring your friends, and we're going to fight it out in the park. It's not something we've seen here. It's not good for the city. People are just frustrated by it. It's affecting their livability. It's affecting their business.
Yes. Has it become more violent?
It happens quicker. The fire starting that we saw on May Day is something we haven't really seen much of in the past. The running through the street, breaking windows and everything in sight. We haven't seen it as consistently as we've seen it in the last 8 months.
But it's the violence that's gotten them attention, directly confronting groups that preach white nationalist rhetoric, like on Inauguration Day, when white nationalist Richard Spencer was punched in the face. And it was the Antifa movement that caused...
And remember, these people see you and I as white nationalists. They see us as no different from Richard Spencer. You don't have to preach the tenets of National Socialism to be considered a Nazi to these guys. And thank you, Gemstoff, for the $1. Time to rumble. Smash that follow, like, share, and repost if you haven't. Do violence to the like button over there, guys. Do violence to the follow button. We've got some great guests for you. Camellia Peterson is going to join us live at 8 a.m. She's not ready for this fire. All right, guys. I know that, guys, people are saying... Libertarians are out there clutching their pearls. Austin, this gives the government too much power. What if they call us terrorists next? Okay, fair question. But here's the distinction. Antifa isn't just a set of ideas. They are an organized, violent movement that literally assassinates conservatives. When you cross from speech into terror, you have forfeited the shield of civil liberty. And let's not forget, we already designate groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda as terrorist organizations. If a group in the United States is following the same violent revolutionary model, bombing police cars, assassinating activists, coordinating with Marxist networks, maybe even some foreign networks, then why should they be exempt because they carry rainbow flags? At some point, order matters, civilization matters, and if the state won't protect peaceful citizens from masked mobs, then it's not a state worth having. Oh, the hypocrisy. You'll notice the same Democrats who cheered when parents at school board meetings. Remember when they were labeling parents at school board meetings as domestic terrorists, right, by Merrick Garland? And now suddenly they'll be horrified at Antifa being called a domestic terrorist, right? Chuck Schumer says Jimmy Kimmel is free speech. Burning down courthouses, that's mostly peaceful, right? Elizabeth Warren literally shared a stage with a radical trans communist who preached violent revolution, and she got a pass. But if you attend a Trump rally, suddenly you're in an FBI file. Oh, oops. Remember how you were treated before Trump was president. This is why Trump's move matters, because he is calling out the two-tier system of justice that has been going on for too long. Right? After World War II, America didn't just rebuild Germany. We had to denazify it. You had to denazify it because after the campaign of bloody, aggressive war that Germany waged against Europe and the United States, we had to dismantle their organizations. We had to root out their networks. We had to dismantle their propaganda. The Antifa are the brown shirts of our era. They are the new fascists marching under the anti-fascist label. They don't deserve political debate. They deserve exposure, investigation, and dismantling, just like the government did to the KKK. Now, does that mean we hand the government a blank check? No. We stay vigilant. We ask for due process, but let's not pretend that Antifa are some misunderstood book club members. They're not. They are domestic terrorists, and it's about time that the government treated them as such. So, questions for the audience. Do you think that this designation is finally going to cripple Antifa's networks, or is the deep state going to drag their feet? 2, question for the audience. Should the U.S. government investigate the funders, the NGOs, professors, tech moguls with CCP ties, right? And do you think that this is the first step toward a broader de-radicalization of the American left, the same way that denazification worked in Germany? Send us in the text, guys. We're going to a break. You're going to enjoy the bonus content. Camellia's going to come on here and avast you hearties. She might even disagree with me on some of these things, but that's what makes it fun. The free speech is now. It's live. It's here. Don't cancel me on the commercial break. Don't go away. Stick around. We'll be right back. If you leave during the commercial break, it's like the FCC shutting down Jimmy Kimmel. It's my free speech to broadcast to you right now, live right now. Don't go away. In 2023, New York raised its cigarette excise tax by $1.00 to $5.35 per pack. New York City imposes its own tax of $1.50 per pack, and that's before you include federal and sales taxes, making for the most expensive smokes in the country. That is, cigarettes are expensive in New York for those who pay those taxes. But state officials were warned that such a high rate would drive consumers to the black market, and that's exactly what happened. According to recent research, more New Yorkers than ever are turning to tax-evading illicit sources for their nicotine needs. You are reading The Rattler from JD to Kill and Reason. Get more of JD's commentary on government overreach and threats to everyday liberty. Taxes into good health or not? When the New York excise tax was hiked, the Albany Times-Union noted, "It's the nation's highest and brings a pack of cigarettes at many retailers to about $12. Health advocates hailed the increase, saying it will lead to fewer smokers and cancer deaths. Anti-tax groups, though, predicted it will increase trafficking in illicit untaxed cigarettes in the state. Health advocates like taxing vices on the theory that raising taxes simultaneously generates government revenue while escalating prices for allegedly bad things, like cigarettes, out of reach of many consumers. What they rarely consider is that there are other options, such as buying cigarettes smuggled from jurisdictions with lower levies. New York has created a cigarette smuggling empire, and the worst is yet to come.
Todd Nesbitt, an economics professor at Ball State University, and Michael Lefebvre of the Mackinac Center for Public Policy warned even before the 2023 tax increase. It's the unavoidable consequence of the state's decades-long history of raising the cigarette tax. If enacted, consumers will go across borders to do their shopping or rely on black market suppliers, agreed the Tax Foundation's Adam Hoffer. Tax revenues will fall, illicit activities will thrive, and law enforcement spending will need to increase. In fact, as Nesbitt, Lefebvre, and Hoffer emphasized, even before the dollar per pack tax hike, more than half of cigarettes sold in the state of New York lacked local tax stamps and were smuggled from elsewhere. Since 2023, illicit dealers appear to have claimed even more market share. Illicit dealers grow their market share. Using methods used by earlier studies last year, researchers from Rutgers University gathered discarded cigarette packs in 30 census tracts across all 5 of New York City's boroughs and checked them for tax stamps. They published their findings last month in BMJ Tobacco Control. This study found that in 2024, the percentage of littered packs bearing the proper NYC tax stamp declined to 16.6%. Georgia surpassed Virginia as the primary source of littered cigarettes. Packs with no stamp increased, rivaling Virginia as the second most common type of littered packs. That means that only about 1 cigarette pack of every 6 gathered by the research team in New York City passed through legal channels. The others were smuggled from jurisdictions with much lower taxes, such as Georgia, 37 cents per pack, Virginia, 60 cents per pack, or else entirely bypassed the legal and tax supply chain. This result could have been foreseen. It was foreseen. Decades of ignored warnings. In 2002, when New York City was considering its $1.50 per pack levy, then Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg harumphed. If it were totally up to me, I would raise the cigarette tax so high the revenues from it would go to zero, in the expectation that high taxes would drive smokers to quit. But, as the New York Times reported, people with a little more savvy warned Hisner, the nanny stater, not to expect easy compliance from clever human beings who don't care to be socially engineered. Richard Lipsky, a lobbyist for the owners of small delis, bodega owners, and convenience stores, predicted in an interview that many neighborhood stores would not survive the higher tax, as many smokers would buy their cigarettes over the internet, from Indian reservations, from adjoining states, or from smugglers, the Times reported. As it turned out, many small shops did better than expected. They were willing to deal with underground wholesalers themselves and stock up on black market cigarettes that they sold to their usual customers. By 2014, city officials found smuggled cigarettes in 48% of bodegas visited in recent inspections, according to a later Times story. The reason for the booming illegal trade was obvious. In early 2002, the city, the state, and the federal government collected a combined $15.80 in taxes on every carton of cigarettes sold here, Michael Wilson noted in that piece. Today, that number is $68 to $60, or almost $7 a pack. With the increases in taxes, more packs flowed up from the south, in cars and overstuffed minivans, and in the underside luggage compartments of passenger buses, to escape taxes. The 2023 tax hike did nothing to change economic incentives for customers, for store owners, or for the smuggling networks that keep them supplied with comparatively affordable smokes. Every increase in tax raises the potential profits to be made by working outside the law to satisfy demand. Worse, in their 2023 column, Nesbitt and Lefebvre cautioned that those people who could be deterred from smoking by high taxes had long ago been reached, and that little more benefit could be expected. The people who still buy cigarettes are dedicated smokers. Their preference for smoking overcomes the deterrent power of any levy. If these people are told to pay even more, they have a greater reason to buy smuggled cigarettes. Unfortunately, that led to enforcement escalation. The face of that escalation is Eric Garner, who was killed in a confrontation that began when police approached him on suspicion of selling loose, untaxed cigarettes. A vice tax policy championed by nanny state health advocates as a means of weaning Americans from the deadly consequences of smoking proves to have deadly consequences itself. Draw prohibition by another name. Jeffrey Singer, an Arizona-based surgeon and senior fellow at the Cato Institute, has a better idea. Instead of chasing bootleggers, drop the tax rate, he suggests. Jack up taxes high enough and it's just prohibition by another name. And prohibition always delivers the same package: black markets, corruption, and violence. That's good advice, but weaning nanny staters from their addiction to vice taxes may be harder than getting smokers to kick their nicotine habit.
Yeah, broadcasters are different than any other form of communication, including here. We're on cable right now. Fox News doesn't have an FCC license. CNN doesn't. But ABC, CBS, NBC, those broadcast stations do. And with that license comes a unique obligation to operate in the public interest. And over the years, the FCC walked away from enforcing that public interest obligation. I don't think we're better off as a country for it. But look, President Trump ran directly at these legacy broadcast outlets, and he exposed them to these market forces. And a lot of these affiliate groups said, to your point, we're tired of carrying this stuff. Late night shows, something's gone seriously awry there. They went from going for applause, from laugh lines to applause lines. They went from being court jesters that would make fun of everybody in power to being court clerics and enforcing a very narrow political ideology. And Nexstar, as you noted, stood up and said, look, we have the license and we don't want to run this anymore. We don't think it serves the interests of our community. Sinclair did the same thing. So there's more work to go, but I'm very glad to see that America's broadcasters are standing up to serve the interests of their community. And we don't just have this progressive foie gras coming out from New York and Hollywood.
I like progressive foie gras.
Fox News has severed bow ties with Tucker Carlson. After all these years, they are parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means. Tucker couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager. But what a shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock this is. Now Tucker can spend more time at home tanning his testicles and touching himself to that sexy green M&M. Sadly, he's probably not done poisoning old people's brains. The question now is, where will he do it next? Will he go to OAN? Will he go to Newsmax? Will he crawl back up Satan's fiery beehole from whence he came? We don't know. One of the most despicable.
We have very real issues with what is permissible on air.
Media organizations or social media platforms should be accountable for the role for being platforms for incitement.
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence.
And if you look at what Jimmy Kimmel was saying, it was very clearly an incitement to violence. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. No, it's not. But I mean, who cares? We live in a post-truth society. Good morning. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. Good God. It's a beautiful day. 62 degrees Fahrenheit in Jefferson City in Donald Trump's America. Yes. Don't freak out. My next guest, Camellia Peterson, joins us live here on the Wake Up America show to talk about comedy, culture, and the media in America. Is this it? Is this the death rattle of television news? Camellia, welcome to the show.
Good morning. I really loved the Johnny Carson clip you played earlier. That really said it, right? I mean, you know, when you go from like a late night comedy show is not meant to take on serious topics. And like, if you do take on serious topics, I mean, there's a fine line in, you know, what you jest about, but you jest about everyone equally. And so I think that they have not done that in, years, decades even now. And so it has, you know, the ratings have plummeted because, you know, after a while, like when you make everything political, it's just not funny anymore. And it's not what people sign up to see. And especially if you're going to expect people to be watching actual television, as opposed to the myriad options they have to watch things on the internet that are funnier.
Absolutely. I mean, I called TV The Walking Dead. It's It's barely living. More people are moving over to the podcast sphere. They're watching shows like the one that they're watching right now. And it's better because there is no censorship. You couldn't wear a hat like this from the Grift Shop on Jimmy Kimmel's show.
This is no Good Morning America.
This is not Good Morning America. These are the libertarians doing a live morning news talk show, and it's way more fun, way more funny, and way more afuera. And a few more pineapples. Camellia, a lot of libertarians, a lot of people who wear the Don't Tread on Me shirts, they love being tread on. Tread on me harder, daddy, they always seem to say. But what are your thoughts on this from a free speech perspective?
Well, okay, so with the FCC and Brendan Carr and Jimmy Kimmel and whatnot, I think two things can be true. Like, I think that, what has been said that they were just looking for a reason to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. Like, I think that's 100% absolutely true. They just needed the final push, and he provided them with that. Would they have done it even without Brendan Carr saying anything? I mean, probably, maybe, who knows? This gave them the reason to do it. Obviously, the reaction from Sinclair Group and things like that, and Nexstar, like they were losing a lot of the affiliates, a significant chunk of affiliates who were just refusing to air that. So it was a business decision, whether anybody likes it or not. Now, like I said, two things can be true here. Like, it can be true that it happened because of that and that it should have happened. It can also be true that the FCC, I'm not so sure that they need to be weighing in on things like that either. And I heard your whole argument about the FCC, and I get it. My question now is, why do we need the FCC anymore? If they were started because, I guess understandably so, you would have the Wild West chaos, like in the airwaves. These are public airwaves, right?
No, not the Wild West, not freedom.
Right. Well, I mean, I can understand from a logistics perspective how you if you have overlap all across these frequencies, that's going to be problematic, right? How does somebody?
Why? What about land? Do we need to have the government apportion land? I mean, just operating. There's only so much land, right? Why couldn't the free market operate in spectrum?
So there's probably some details of this that I don't understand very well.
That's okay.
But I do know that
this is a business kind of a thing. So I know the television industry.
So here's my question. Even now, in radio, for example, even now with radio, there are disputes where two different stations, right, will have overlapping areas, and there's a dispute about, which one has the rights to that area so that they're not, going over each other. And so, but yes, in the age of the internet, I don't even know why we need this anymore. I mean, I'm sure there will people say, oh, we definitely need it for radio because what happens when EMP hits and everything goes down and you've got to have well, I'm sorry. If that happens, you have bigger problems.
Yeah, than trying to tune into your favorite podcast or something. Yeah, exactly. Unless it's the Wake Up America show, which should be a national license, mandated, required listening every morning on the Wake Up America shows. So here's the thing. The problem with these arguments about free speech and even the licensing is that the government does have that standard set where it says that it has to operate in the public interest. And I think clearly we could make a fairly objective case for why Jimmy Kimmel lying about this shooter is not in the public interest. And they want to fall back on the whole I'm a comedian thing. It's kind of like the Douglas Murray, Dave Smith debate, right? Whenever they want to talk about serious subjects, right? Or like Joe Rogan, they want to talk about serious subjects, or Jon Stewart, perfect example. When they want to Colbert, when they want to talk about serious subjects, they make serious commentary on serious issues. Then when they want to be comedians, when they're wrong and when they're lying, or obviously acting out a political agenda that's even being handed down from the networks to them as just let's not pretend that is it free speech, Camellia, if you're just reading a teleprompter. That's not even your words. You didn't even write them. You're reading someone else's thing. So that's free speech. They're literally just parroting. Is that in the public interest? I mean, the liberals created, it's just like with cancel culture, the bigger picture here, Camellia. The left created these weapons. The left created this system. Nobody's advocating to get rid of licensing. Nobody's advocating to get rid of cancel culture except for the people who it's being used against. It's like now it's like the enemy has slipped, tripped. The weapon is in our hands that they created. And what are we supposed to do? This isn't the ring of power to throw into Mount Doom. We're talking about a simple standard. It has to act in the public interest. Do you believe that Jimmy Kimmel's show being granted a license is in good faith upholding the public interest?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, where do we define, like, I know they have this public interest standard, but where is that defined? Like, what do we call that? That's exactly. Pretty vague. Do you know what I mean?
Right. It's whoever's in charge gets to define it.
Right.
Whoever's in charge gets to define it.
And that's our problem. You know, one of the first things I did this morning is because, you know, when I was thinking about the FCC and Brendan Carr's statements, I was like, I wonder what Ajit Pai thinks about this.
You know what? I bet you Ajit Pai, he always he follows me and then he sometimes he will mysteriously like some of my tweets sometimes.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that he's more libertarian than, you know, than he can openly say he is in polite society. He's not ready to put on the Eaton Bush 69 hat and the doth not tread on me shirt yet. No, but I will say that I'll bet he probably agrees with us that the licensing, or I don't know, I say us. I'll bet he probably agrees with me that there shouldn't be an FCC, that the licensing should be homesteaded or it should be auctioned off to the highest bidder. And that that it should be an entirely free market. But of course, remember, the conservatives, they also want the licensing because the conservatives wanted to enforce their morality standards. They don't want sex and drugs and violence on cable, you know, news, television thing. They don't want to see all that kind of stuff because their kids watch it. Or the kids don't watch it, but they used to watch it.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I do think that he probably is with us, but he is on this probably predictably not saying a word, but I can understand why he wouldn't. But, you know, I do, it's time for us to have the conversation. The problem is, here's my problem, is that when we are the side that's in power, so to speak, you know, it's questionable sometimes, I guess, but what, are we going to do anything about that while we're in power? Or are we just going to use the ring of power while we have it and not really get rid of it? And I think that that's what we see the pattern of over and over again, is that, you know, we're talking about all of these things on the right, but do we have the gumption to do those things that need to be done that actually get to the root of the principles that we espouse? And that's, you know, that's the bottom line. I know that's kind of like pie in the sky, you know, utopian sort of dreams, but I would like to at least see an effort on that. You know, the thing I keep thinking about this is and I was on another radio show an hour or so ago talking about this as well. And the thing is like, I think that you're definitely right when you've been talking about cancel culture versus consequence culture.
Thank you. I love it when Camellia said, Brad, clip it. She said it. Austin's right. Continue.
So, I mean, you know, the thing is that we, you know, there is a line where you do cross over into cancel culture, but, you know, I do think that everybody should be, like, we are responsible to each other. If we're talking about, like, what Pam Bondi was doing and, like, the government being responsible for enforcing something, heck no, that is not the role of government. So, but if we're talking about public shaming and, I'm fine with that. We should be accountable to each other, and that's how communities operate, is, you know, being accountable to each other for our behavior and how it affects other people. So that said, I think that these tragedies and the crises that happen in our country always have the tendency to trend us more towards authoritarianism. And that's my big concern out of things like this is in the name of justice, we end up instituting more authoritarianism. And so I do think we need to be on guard about that. But it's also why I was very encouraged to see such a backlash on the right against Pam Bondi and those like ridiculous anti-freedom things she was saying.
Yes, exactly. Because I think people on the right today are more, I think people may be less libertarian than they've been on the right in a long time, Camellia, but I think in many ways they're more savvy, which I'm not necessarily conflating the two. But I will say that it does seem as if Republicans there's a lot less stupidity than we had during the John McCain, Mitt Romney era from Republicans, who they very much, Camellia, I know you weren't in politics at this time, but I can tell you that like Barack Obama steamrolled all of these Republicans for years. Joe Biden too. They trounced them, walked all over them. And the Republicans, in the name of being nice or just sheer boomer brain mindset, not being clever enough to stay ahead of these guys, they kept waving the white flag of surrender. They kept putting out their hand to shake their hand and say, come on, let's work across the aisle. Let's have bipartisanship. And they surrendered on every single issue every time, Camellia. And I am, 44 years old. I've been working in politics now for the majority of my career from 2006 and until now. And I've just never seen Republicans this savvy when it comes to their savagery. They no longer extend a hand to shake a hand that will get slapped away. They extend the hand, and it's got like the Assassin's Creed. You don't know this video game. It's got a little knife in there, and it goes whooshing when they grab their hands. And frankly, it's long past time. I played. Did you see the video that I played of these Antifa characters out there burning, rioting, setting fires, all these kinds of things? Trump has designated these people as a violent terrorist organization.
Yeah, it's about time. I mean, I think that's a good thing.
That's the knife. They brought the knife to the knife fight, or they brought the gun to the knife fight. You know what I mean? Yeah. To some sense.
I mean,
go ahead.
How in the world we have not done that with Antifa before now is beyond me, because, there are, like, you can talk about free speech and all of these, all these other things where we can quibble about like where the line falls on what's acceptable or not, but what Antifa has been doing for many years has so far crossed the line in physical violence and violating other people's rights. It's baffling that they have been allowed to continue like this. Like the hammer should have been dropped long ago on them, because there's just like, it is black and white. There is no gray area with Antifa in terms of, what should have happened consequence wise, because they have clearly been breaking the law and doing harm to other people for a very long time. So I don't know, like, it is about time. I am all in favor of that, because they have been doing that, and they haven't been just disrupting the lives of the people that they are politically opposed to. They have been disrupting the lives and causing harm to people who have nothing to do with any of what they are doing, who are just trying to live their lives in these areas that they are in, and who, can't sleep at night because they're blasting music, at such a high decibel level that there's no way to block it out. I mean, how are they not all in jail like all of the time? This is just
they do. You know what? They are in jail all the time, Camellia, but what they have
in and out.
They in and out. Exactly.
Catch and release.
Exactly. Camellia, one last thing before we let you go. The reactions to Charlie Kirk's death on the left, I actually think were pretty predictable. Some of the reactions on the right haven't necessarily been predictable. Maybe it was predictable for you. There's a lot of, so much so that J.D. Vance had to weigh in yesterday talking about all the people who are trying to put words in Charlie Kirk's mouth, right? They're trying to say, for example, some people are claiming, before he died, he was going Catholic. It reminds me of all like Whenever the religious people will point at like an atheist, they'll say, "Oh, they confessed on their deathbed to me that they actually believed," and all this kind of stuff.
Or secretly in circles, he was not so pro-Israel.
Oh,
and
yeah, exactly.
It's backroom, like if you really knew him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, the death of Charlie Kirk was so shocking that we couldn't have possibly seen that we were here just a week ago. We couldn't have known that we were going to be in this situation. But what has been your thoughts about the reaction that the right has had to the death of Charlie Kirk? Not just the cancel culture or the consequence culture or all that, the fighting back, but just how the right has dealt with Charlie Kirk's death.
I mean, understandable, right? This was not, was Charlie Kirk a polarizing political figure? Yes. I don't think that there is any doubt about that. But I think that the shock and the outrage and the heartbreak that people have responded to has hit home on a visceral level because of the way in which this was done, and when it was literally an assassination for the words that he was speaking. And the idea, I think that people then start to think the idea that, this could happen to anyone. Like, does this chill, free speech? Should I be more careful? Like, you see lots of public figures now, what do you do in public? Do you cancel events? And so I do think like that, and the desire to eradicate anything that says that something like this is okay. And that's like, I get that. And there should be that attitude that, if you are going to say or even hint that this kind of a consequence to speaking your opinion publicly, if you say that that's okay at all, like you need to be dragged and shamed for that, because that is just about the most anti-American thing that you can do. This is what we're founded on. Like, it's one of the most important things that we have.
Yeah, I want to leave you with this one last argument, Camellia, and we're going to get all super philosophical here. And this is kind of going back to the Jimmy Kimmel discussion, this topic of, was it right? Was it wrong? Maybe you heard me mentioning the small harms principle, talking about, doing small harms. In the debate about the libertarian philosophy of non-aggression, in the non-aggression principle, there's the concept of, of harm and when is it justified? When are you actually justified to commit acts of aggression? Now, thou shalt not initiate, essentially, is the concept, right? You shall not initiate aggression. But in regards to, how it applies in this context, there are circumstances and scenarios where small harms are permitted, and in some cases that they're actually encouraged. Some people argue, some people disagree with this, but vaccination is an example where you do a small harm. This is a literal physical concept. You introduce like dead bacteria, right? Dead viral cells into a body. You might get a little, reaction to it, right? You're going to do a small harm. And then the idea, of course, is that you will now have antibodies to that disease. That's a concept. That's a literal physical example of it, right? But there are philosophical examples of this. And one of them, I won't use if you're starving to death, steal bread. Everybody uses that one. Like, is it okay to steal bread? Well, if you're going to die, perhaps, stealing is still wrong. But I like the small harm principle as applied to something like if there's a hurricane and you are on a boat and there's a private dock, you don't have permission or time to get permission to use that person's dock. And you may bring your boat into that dock to save your own life, thereby transgressing someone else's private property. Libertarians like to joke where it's like, if you fall hanging off the side of a building and you fall, can you grab onto somebody's private property that's lower to save your own? No, this is a serious discussion. Don't you laugh, because I'll tell you, if you go out and you search for this discussion, Murray Rothbard was talking about it, right? Yeah. But in the real world, there's the physical act of getting a vaccination, the small harm. And then in the real world, there's this philosophical concept where a judge would say, hey, listen, you obviously you didn't have private property right to use this dock. However, you did use it. However, you did it to save your life. However, your boat did some damage to the dock, so now you owe recompensation. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about small harms. And I would invite, you and other libertarians to consider that we don't live in a world where the FCC doesn't exist. We don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world of where we do have to choose lessers of two evils. I think that you going from a street activist or a grassroots activist from the cornfields to the state house probably now see these realities more than it is, more than a lot of regular people see it, which is that there really is sometimes only a choice between a lesser of two evil. And in my argument, Jimmy Kimmel being fired, even if the FCC did do it, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, it's a small harm. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I do think it goes back to what we talk about all the time with Thomas Sowell, and there are no solutions, only trade-offs, right?
You're so brilliant, Camellia.
But I think it's something that we always just have to be like, if we stop talking about those trade-offs and the risks involved in those trade-offs, that's where we start to get into dangerous waters. So I think that, even if we have to make these trade-offs in the interest of liberty, we need to acknowledge that we are making risky moves.
Harms. Yes.
And we have to be very cautious that you don't go too far with that to where it becomes the normal rather than the exception. Like it becomes something that is serving as a catalyst towards more freedom rather than the opposite. So I think I get what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think that the fact that we are talking about it is what we need to keep doing so that we are always cognizant of the risks involved.
There we go. That's Camellia Peterson. She's here every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 a.m. Central Time. She's always here on the Freedom Watch. We appreciate you, CJ. Anything else you want to plug or say real quick before we go?
I don't have anything today. You can come see me in Rare Camellia on Twitter, now X.
Have a good one, Camellia. Bye-bye.
Have a great day, everyone.
That's Camellia Peterson. Rare Camellia over on X. All right, Matt Kibbe's on standby. I need to go get him. Don't go away. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. It's only going to get better. And we've got a trans Antifa activist who will be on the show after Matt. So you just can't go anywhere. You just can't. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
We have very real issues with what is permissible on air.
Media organizations or social media platforms should be accountable for the role for being platforms for incitement
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to have.
When you look at Jimmy Kimmel, when you look at ABC News, I think it was very clearly incitement to violence, very clearly. But maybe my eyes are clouded. Maybe all this winning that's going on under the Trump administration has blinded me to the loss of free speech. You know what? We need to talk to an expert on free speech. Sadly, the left shot him. So we're going to bring in the next best expert for free speech, and may God bless him and always keep him safe. Matt Kibbe joining us live here on the Wake Up America show. Good morning, Matt, and welcome to the Wake Up America show, brother.
Austin, I'm a little uncomfortable with you putting a target on my back, but I guess I have to accept that. So,
hey, Matt, let's honor Charlie. He was an incredible young man. Achieved things that I could never even dream to achieve. What a terrible loss, wasn't it?
Oh, it was awful. And I knew him when he was a high school activist, when I was a Tea Party organizer, and I got to meet him very early on. And he was such a smart, precocious young man that, like, he would seek people out, and he would find a way to connect with people. And even back then, we had spirited arguments about his conservative versus my libertarian perspective. And up until my last conversation with him, I will tell you that he was a big tent organizer and very influenced by libertarian ideas. So we always got along even when we disagreed. And I think that was part of his magnetism, right? He could talk to people that he disagreed with, and you felt like you were actually having a conversation instead of an argument.
I love hearing that. And I know my audience does too, Matt, because we have a very libertarian audience here. But we also kind of blend it with the MAGA crowd because there's a lot of overlap. And I saw that with Charlie Kirk as well. He was very libertarian in certain ways. He was very much, he was very not an authoritarian, right? He wasn't the type of person who was really all about, punishing his enemies and using the government against his enemies. In the scenario that we're talking about now in Jimmy Kimmel, I wonder how he would have felt about it. Sadly, he's not here to offer his opinion, but I wonder what your thoughts are in regards to Jimmy Kimmel and him being let go at ABC. Do you look at this as a danger to free speech, or do you look at this as the media isn't a free market anyway? They're supposed to act in the public interests, something in between, more nuanced? Share with us your thoughts.
All of that. It's a very complicated situation. The FCC has unique power to sort of browbeat and jawbone network TV. It's kind of a dinosaur in that sense because most people, particularly young people, are watching things like this instead of network TV. And late night TV was dying, and the death knell was certainly the sort of intolerant authoritarianism of all these late night talk show hosts. They're supposed to be funny. I remember when comedy would poke fun at authoritarianism coming from the left or the right, and Jimmy Kimmel didn't do that anymore. And like the clip in question, there was no joke in there. It wasn't funny. It was in very poor taste and disrespectful. And I'm old enough to remember when Jimmy Kimmel broke down in tears because someone had shot a lion. Do you remember that thing? I didn't have time to grok it, but so maybe show a little bit of compassion. The problem is the FCC weighed in. Trump's chairman weighed in and started browbeating both ABC and the affiliates to do that, and they can't afford to piss off the FCC. So I wish that the Trump administration would have stayed out of it completely and let Jimmy Kimmel die a natural and humiliating TV death, because he was not funny. He was dying, and his audience, he pissed them off with the Charlie Kirk thing, and we should have just let the market work.
I agree with you, Matt, and I think it is important for us to articulate the ideal, but I think the realizations of the Trump era are that many of these MAGA people were former Ron Paul people, Neocons used to describe themselves as liberals mugged by reality. Many MAGA people describe themselves as Tea Party supporters or Ron Paul supporters who are mugged by reality in regards to bringing the gun, the metaphorical bringing of the gun to the knife fight. And noting that television, which, you know, I worked in for a number of years, in which, you know, tangentially you've been affiliated with as well. Television is not a free market. It's licensed. The FCC controls who gets the license. In an ideal market, there would be no licensing, and they would either homestead the spectrum or it would get auctioned off to the highest bidder. So, I mean, in some sense, we really are kind of always choosing between the lesser of two evils. So, you know, we've fought cancel culture for years. I don't consider people losing their jobs for calling for bloody murder cancel culture. I consider that to be something more like consequence culture. And I wonder if you agree, Matt. I mean, I can't help but wonder if some part of you even, right? You're very stoic, very, you know, rational, thoughtful libertarian. If you don't sometimes see the point of what MAGA talks about when they talk about, you know, bringing the gun to the knife fight versus the Romney-McCain years where it was not libertarian tangential. There were no former libertarians, now MAGA Republicans who are in power. Do you sort of see that argument they're talking about in terms of taking the weapon from the enemy's hands and you know, at least giving them a good nick across the forehead before you throw the ring of power into Mount Doom, so to speak?
Right. I totally get where they're coming from. And it's perhaps ironic that Matt Taibbi had just released in a more extensive deep dive into how Twitter, at the behest of the censorship industrial complex, actually deplatformed Charlie Kirk. But I do think, you know, first of all, the entire conservative libertarian America First community never depended on network TV, in large part because we were completely shut out. And that was both government and sort of the liberal dominance on these platforms. You know, obviously with the exception of Fox News, and Greg Gutfeld is doing better than all these guys. But that said, like our bread and butter is technological innovation and free speech outside of the system. So when I hear AOC complaining about not using the government well enough to stop her political enemies, I'm like, welcome to the fight, lady. Welcome to being foisted on your own petard. I think we lose if we just fight over the ring. And you know, like I'm getting a lot of comments this morning about something I posted saying from MAGA, America First, Republicans, our strategy, according to them, is to never lose power. And I think that's a wildly naive strategy. So I would suggest that our strategy should be free market in ideas. Jimmy Kimmel was about to be destroyed by the market, by his own audience. Let it happen that way. If we set the precedent that we need to use the government to censor our enemies, I still think it gets a lot worse than it's been the next time a Democrat takes over.
Okay, Matt. I mean, there's a really good, strong argument for that, and I'll definitely consider it. I see you got a lot of fans over there in the office or in the Rumble comments. Frickety says, having Matt Kibbe on the show is very cool. Somebody else says, I subscribe to Blaze TV, enjoy watching Kibbe on Liberty. Ike Given a Shits, who very much gives a shits, says Matt is wise. We couldn't say Ike Given a Shits if we were on television.
That's right.
Next topic, Matt Kibbe, is the Antifa angle. Now, I've been to a lot of protests. I've organized a few protests, and I was at Occupy Wall Street, Zuccotti Park, trying to talk to people about the Federal Reserve and why abolishing the Federal Reserve and central banking is a good thing. Maybe the socialists could get on board with that. Of course, the socialists the true communists and socialists who follow the Karl Marx platform, they know that they want the central bank. Bernie Sanders doesn't want to abolish the Fed. He wants to be in control of it. He wants the government to have total control. He doesn't want there to be anything like Fed independence. That being said, at these events, we're always violent anarchist. When I say anarchist, I mean the lefty types, the anarcho-syndicalists, right? The collectivists who are always there causing trouble, throwing rocks, right? Pouring bottles of water on people's head, engaging in and activating violence at these events. Donald Trump has now come out and suggested that he's going to call them not just a terrorist organization, but a sick and twisted terrorist organization. Is this the right move in your opinion, Matt?
So I know Andy No has documented the violence of Antifa going way back to the early days in Portland, Oregon, which is now the shell of the city it used to be. And I think we should always denounce violence, whether it's by individuals or organized by organizations. But I don't know what the legal implications are of designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. I would rather hold the individuals who commit acts of violence accountable as individuals. And I'm a little bit anxious about this phrase domestic terrorism, because as you know, I was a Tea Party organizer going all the way back to 2008, and the Ron Paul movement fed into that. And I'm old enough to remember when an organization called Organizing for America, which had been Organizing for Obama, so Obama's campaign arm, actually called Tea Party activists domestic terrorists. And they quickly took it down because there was an outrage and all that. But
that was the MIAC report, and Bob Barr supporters, Ron Paul supporters, domestic terrorists. The Homeland Security Department put that out.
Right. And fast forward to the memo that Tulsi Gabbard released, I think in April, that was the fully unredacted Biden administration strategy to formally designate moms and pops showing up at school board meetings, anybody with a Gadsden flag, anybody questioning the COVID industrial complex as, wait for it, domestic terrorists. So I think, and I know what MAGA is going to say. Like, they did it to us. Hold my beer. We have to do it back to them. I think we need to maintain the principle that individuals who commit acts of violence versus individuals who are speaking truths of power in the town square. And I think there's a bright line there.
Can we compromise, though? Can we, instead of going full-blown MAGA, can we just do it to them 2 or 3 times until they feel the pain, like you have to do sometimes to a bully, right? Sometimes the bully keeps bullying you until you finally give him a few knocks, and then we can declare a ceasefire, but it'll be on our terms rather than ceasefire on their terms.
Yeah. I mean, if there is a candidate for the designation domestic terrorist, it is Antifa. Their philosophy going all the way back to their anti-fascist roots right after World War II was explicitly violent. It's explicitly Marxist, which I repeat myself because it's a violent strategy and ideology that believes that the only way to disrupt the system is to hurt people and take their stuff. So I totally get it. I'm just warning people that we can't call all of our political enemies domestic terrorists, and we should always designate. The reason why Antifa is a terrorist organization is because they promote violence. And it's violence committed by individuals against individuals. That is the standard. And I just don't want us to keep going down this road where our political opposition, we immediately call them terrorists.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem, and it's sort of a crossroads that we find ourselves at, Matt. I mean, we really hoped for a libertarian movement back in 2016 when Rand Paul was running for president. And, Rand Paul's sort of like falling to the back of the pack there was the primary motivator for me to jump into the libertarian race, to try and keep the movement that felt like it went from being at the top of the tower to being on life support. And it still does feel very much like the liberty movement in the United States specifically is on life support. It's good to see Javier Milei of Argentina making great strides for our ideas down there. He finally is answering the question that we were always needled with: when have libertarians' ideals ever been tried? And we had to explain to them American history and what the Gilded Age was really about, and Grover Cleveland and Calvin Coolidge, endless events and conventions that you and I attended and spoke at, Matt, to try and talk to people about these ideas that are the ideas of American liberty. But it sometimes feels as if with the MAGA people, I don't always think that this is the case, but I do think that it sometimes feels like these are the muscle, the armed muscle of those libertarian ideas. It's kind of like you hire armed guards to do violence. And I supported Donald Trump for the very libertarian things that he had done in his first term, and I had a whole long list of them. I could bring it out here. But it does feel like the American movement is on life support to an extent, Kibbe. And I wonder if you would talk to that very briefly. Talk to us about your thoughts about where the American liberty movement is right now. Do you feel like it's at a crossroads? Do you feel like we're weaker than we've ever been? Because I certainly don't feel anything like what we had during the 2008 Ron Paul years. It feels like it's deflated like a balloon. Your thoughts?
Well, we're in the middle of something. We're in the middle of this radically democratized, decentralized technology movement, and I think that's why the censorship industrial complex arose out of that to stop us, and they've been trying to stop us every step of the way. I think there is a beautiful new coalition forming, and you saw huge elements of it in the Trump coalition, the Maha wing of the party, and the wing that I call Make America Free Again, the MAFA wing. And it's about civil liberties. It's a visceral reaction against lockdown authoritarianism. And a lot of these issues are things that Ron Paul is still talking about. So I'm not so sure. I think there's a libertarian populism emerging. And I think we're part of this is sort of a reaction to what we tried to do during the Tea Party, which was follow the rules. They said, if you believe in democracy, you have to show up and protest. If you believe in democracy, you have to get involved in elections. You have to elect better people. And I blame the Republican Party for this. We brought all of that to the table. And then the old guys, the Mitch McConnells of the party, said, you know what? We love the fact that you voted for us, but we don't give a damn about your priorities. So that's in large part where the MAGA movement came from. They're like, screw you, hold my beer. We're gonna break the system. But I think that's the middle of the story, and I think that the liberty movement is still potent, and you can see this with the rising national popularity of guys like Thomas Massie. Even though Trump's mad at him, even though parts of MAGA are mad at him, he's actually doing the things that Trump said he was going to do. And to me, that's sort of that libertarian populism that could be quite potent.
He does, but boy, are we going to need a turn of the cards. It's kind of like playing Texas Hold'em, right? We're kind of hoping that the river is going to save us to some extent, because what I fear is that, and you're right about Thomas Massie, but what I fear is that he becomes another Ron Paul in Congress, right? I fear that Rand Paul becomes another Ron Paul in Congress, not passing any legislation, making more enemies than friends. And certainly I find it inspiring when we hear these brilliant men talking about the principles of liberty and standing up for these things. But, and certainly maybe he could be a martyr. Like Charlie Kirk is probably his martyrdom will now bring more people to his cause. But quite frankly, I feel, Matt, as if the libertarian movement needs fewer martyrs and more live champions of liberty. Can you understand what I mean?
100%. And I should say, like everything that I do at Free the People, I am a recovering political activist because I decided quite a while ago, actually after I did a super PAC for Rand Paul when he was running for president in 2016. And I decided after that I was going to take a step back from politics and focus on education and culture and turning people on to these values, because as Andrew Breitbart always taught us, politics is downstream of culture. Mm-hmm. And I view Ron Paul, first of all, he was not so much a politician or a member of Congress. He was a cultural icon using politics as a soapbox to turn people on to ideas. And Thomas Massie has very much become that. And Rand Paul, who is now the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, is sort of particularly focused on COVID accountability. And he's about to subpoena Anthony Fauci again. And we're going to get some answers there. But their importance is not necessarily that one Dr. No in the House or Senate. Their importance is their ability to build a national audience like Charlie Kirk did. Like Charlie Kirk wasn't a politician. And I would argue he's probably more effective outside the system than in, even though he was wildly politically active.
Mm-hmm. Boy, Matt, I love hearing this. And I think you're right. To some extent, Thomas Massie is a cultural leader. I wish he was a more effective political leader. Some of that is within his control. Some of that is not. If for some reason he loses his seat, and I hope that doesn't happen, I hope that he goes out and does more documentaries like the one that he did about living off the grid. I think he could probably inspire more of the Maha type people if you were to say produce some media for him for that. If you were to put, I mean, I could see you leading a whole swarm of activists who are producing content around Massey's brilliant career and his engineering background, and maybe even some more inventions to add to his list of patents and intellectual property. Who knows? But I'm afraid that the American liberty movement needs a reboot. Like a Frankenstein's monster, a Frankenstein needs to come along and put some electricity back into the monster, because it just feels like everybody has sort of retreated to like their little kingdoms, and we don't have the cohesiveness that we used to have. I don't know if it would take one galvanizing moment like a leader or some event, right? Like some black swan event that we could never foresee. But I find myself looking at Argentina and being jealous. For the first time ever in my life, I look at another country and I'm jealous of them. I've never felt that way. I love my country. I love America. But when I see what's happening in South America, it makes me very sad to see, you know, where we're at right now and where they're going. And Matt, is there anything on this that you think we missed, or perhaps you'd like to share, or is there any project you're working on you'd like to plug?
Yeah, but by the way, so Free the People primarily is about producing video content, documentaries. We produce a lot of comedy, and the idea is to reach people outside of our bubble. The very first documentary we made was Off the Grid with Thomas Massey, and that has helped turn Thomas into a cult classic. When his wife Rhonda passed away, we went back and reworked it a little bit to include songs that we had sort of secretly recorded with Thomas playing banjo and Rhonda singing as an homage and respect to her. The point is, like, how do we talk to people that aren't in our little bubble, right? Like, I've read all the books. Austin, you've read all the books. We have this beautiful history of being libertarian activists / thinkers, but how do we reach people that have never heard of the L word or any of these things? And I think the one thing, I'll wrap up with this, the one thing that was inspiring about Charlie Kirk, who was not a libertarian, is conservative with a lot of libertarian leanings, he would go talk to people. And I think that empathetic understanding of where people are coming from, really struggling to figure out, what are you trying to say to me? Even though you're using this code language that maybe comes from the woke left, what are you actually trying to say? And could we find some common ground in those values? And the hard line is, like, if you want a conversation and not violence, I'm at least willing to talk to you.
Matt Kibbe, you give me hope. I appreciate that. I haven't felt hope in a long time for the liberty movement in the United States. Maybe we need to have you come back more a little often. Thanks for being so generous with your time, Matt. And it looks like you got a lot of fans in the audience, so keep up the good work. All right, brother?
Thank you, sir.
Have a great day.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country. I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled, and then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important. And
there you go. Deplatforming works, and it is important. You know what? She's right. If you wanted to clip that, don't put the period after clip. Just do ! Clip, and then it'll do 30 seconds. But if you want, now you're going to have to do it ! Clip, and then like 60 seconds, and then you'll have to cut off me talking about how to use the clipping tool. We have a trans queer Antifa activist on this show coming up next. Before we go, though, real quick to live to a queer trans Antifa activist who will be joining us live on this show. Don't go away. I want to remind you guys that I am going to be speaking at an event, and it's an online event, so anybody can watch it. It's the Expat Money Summit. When I talk about looking at When I talk about looking at Argentina, I'm serious. This is an expat money summit for people who are looking overseas as a backup plan. Plan B. Expatmoneysummit.com is the website. You can get a free ticket if you go to expatmoneysummit.com, or if you want the VIP experience, the VIP panels, the VIP ticket, I'll get you 20% off if you use my name, Austin, Austin. Use my name, Austin. Go to expatmoneysummit.com. If you're looking what's happening in South America and saying, oh my God, they're going to make the greatest country the world's ever seen if they continue to elect people like Javier Milei down there, then expatmoneysummit.com is the place for you to go. Okay, so visit. Ike giving us shirts. He signed up for expatmoneysummit.com. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that very much. All right. Thank you. It is so brave of you to let me speak here today in this fascist echo chamber full of cisgender coffee drinkers and flag wavers. You're welcome. You're welcome for my presence. Now, let me educate you. You see, Antifa is not a terrorist organization. No. We're like community organizers. Same thing. And yeah, maybe, okay, once I said riots and rebellions must happen for tangible change. You know, riots are the voice of the unheard. But what else are we supposed to do? Vote? Ew, gross. We're anarchists. Voting is like showering. It's optional. Let's clear up something about Charlie Kirk, shall we? Let's clear it up. Conservatives say he was assassinated by a leftist radical. Totally false. He was assassinated by feelings, and feelings are valid. My feelings are the most valid. Do you know how hard it is being an Antifa? We have to dress all in black year-round. You know how sweaty it gets in Portland, Oregon in July? We're basically goth Power Rangers, but we're broke. And don't get me started on weapons. The media says we're armed to the teeth. Please, half of our rifles are airsoft guns painted black. The only thing most of us have ever successfully shot is a TikTok dance video. It's true. It's true. But we are a diverse movement. We've got communists. That's how you know it's live. We've got communists, socialists, anarchists, gender fluid, pansexual baristas, everyone except, people with jobs. The FBI says they're investigating us. Pfft, good luck, boys. You can't infiltrate Antifa. Why? Because none of us shows up on time. You think you can run a sting up on people who can't even coordinate a brunch? Just try. And people are like, but Ermia, what about the funding? Okay, fine. We do get some money from some rich tech bros, whatever. And maybe they're tied to China. Who cares? But don't you dare call us sellouts. We only take the CCP money ironically. Like capitalism is evil unless it's paying for our Uber to the riot. And yeah, I once got an award from the State Department. What can I say? Even the feds love a good revolution when it comes with a pronoun badge. They do. They love it. The feds love it. They love us. They give us lots of money. But seriously, Trump calling us terrorists? That's the best branding we've ever had. You think anyone was scared of Antifa before? It sounds like an off-brand hand sanitizer. But now, major terrorist organization. Oh, honey, that's going on the t-shirts. And let me close with this. You conservatives, you have your guns, your liberty, your families, but we have something far stronger. We have blue sky, and that is why we will win. Viva la revolution! right, guys, there it is. That is our show for today. It felt like a freaking amazing show today. Great guests, great topics, lots to discuss, lots of t-shirt sales. Doth not tread on me. And to think, people make fun of my theater degree when I work in politics. Look how I'm using my degree. What'd you major in? English? Glad to have all of our friends here live. If you haven't already, please do click the like button. And if today's your first time watching the show and that we're your kind of weird, click the follow button as well. Come back and join us Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. This Friday, we're going to have Justin Petersen, Stephanie Peterson, Freedom Family Friday. It's going to be a great show. My brother's on the show. It's always good. We'll see you guys right back again here tomorrow on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
In 2023, New York raised its cigarette excise tax by $1.00 to $5.35 per pack. New York City imposes its own tax of $1.50 per pack, and that's before you include federal and sales taxes, making for the most expensive smokes in the country. That is, cigarettes are expensive in New York for those who pay those taxes. But state officials were warned that such a high rate would drive consumers to the black market, and that's exactly what happened. According to recent research, more New Yorkers than ever are turning to tax-evading illicit sources for their nicotine needs. You are reading The Rattler from JD to Kill and Reason. Get more of JD's commentary on government overreach and threats to everyday liberty. Taxes into good health or not? When the New York excise tax was hiked, the Albany Times-Union noted, "It's the nation's highest and brings a pack of cigarettes at many retailers to about $12. Health advocates hailed the increase, saying it will lead to fewer smokers and cancer deaths. Anti-tax groups, though, predicted it will increase trafficking in illicit untaxed cigarettes in the state. Health advocates like taxing vices on the theory that raising taxes simultaneously generates government revenue while escalating prices for allegedly bad things, like cigarettes, out of reach of many consumers. What they rarely consider is that there are other options, such as buying cigarettes smuggled from jurisdictions with lower levies. New York has created a cigarette smuggling empire, and the worst is yet to come. Todd Nesbitt, an economics professor at Ball State University, and Michael Lefebvre of the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, warned even before the 2023 tax increase. It's the unavoidable consequence of the state's decades-long history of raising the cigarette tax. If enacted, consumers will go across borders to do their shopping or rely on black market suppliers, agreed the Tax Foundation's Adam Hoffer. Tax revenues will fall, illicit activities will thrive, and law enforcement spending will need to increase. In fact, as Nesbitt, Lefebvre, and Hoffer emphasized, even before the $1 per pack tax hike, more than half of cigarettes sold in the state of New York lacked local tax stamps and were smuggled from elsewhere. Since 2023, illicit dealers appear to have claimed even more market share. Illicit dealers grow their market share. Using methods used by earlier studies last year, researchers from Rutgers University gathered discarded cigarette packs in 30 census tracts across all 5 of New York City's boroughs and checked them for tax stamps. They published their findings last month in BMJ Tobacco Control. This study found that in 2024, the percentage of littered packs bearing the proper NYC tax stamp declined to 16.6%. Georgia surpassed Virginia as the primary source of littered cigarettes. Packs with no stamp increased, rivaling Virginia as the second most common type of littered packs. That means that only about 1 cigarette pack of every 6 gathered by the research team in New York City passed through legal channels. The others were smuggled from jurisdictions with much lower taxes, such as Georgia, 37 cents per pack, Virginia, 60 cents per pack, or else entirely bypassed the legal and tax supply chain. This result could have been foreseen. It was foreseen. Decades of ignored warnings. In 2002, when New York City was considering its $1.50 per pack levy, then Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg harumphed. If it were totally up to me, I would raise the cigarette tax so high the revenues from it would go to zero, in the expectation that high taxes would drive smokers to quit. But, as the New York Times reported, people with a little more savvy warned Hisner, the nanny stater, not to expect easy compliance from clever human beings who don't care to be socially engineered. Richard Lipsky, a lobbyist for the owners of small delis, bodega owners, and convenience stores, predicted in an interview that many neighborhood stores would not survive the higher tax, as many smokers would buy their cigarettes over the internet, from Indian reservations, from adjoining states, or from smugglers, the Times reported. As it turned out, many small shops did better than expected. They were willing to deal with underground wholesalers themselves and stock up on black market cigarettes that they sold to their usual customers. By 2014, city officials found smuggled cigarettes in 48% of bodegas visited in recent inspections, according to a later Times story. The reason for the booming illegal trade was obvious. In early 2002, the city, the state, and the federal government collected a combined $15.80 in taxes on every carton of cigarettes sold here, Michael Wilson noted in that piece. Today, that number is $68 to $60, or almost $7 a pack. With the increases in taxes, more packs flowed up from the south, in cars and overstuffed minivans, and in the underside luggage compartments of passenger buses to escape taxes. The 2023 tax hike did nothing to change economic incentives for customers, for store owners, or for the smuggling networks that keep them supplied with comparatively affordable smokes. Every increase in tax raises the potential profits to be made by working outside the law to satisfy demand. Worse, in their 2023 column, Nesbitt and Lefebvre cautioned that those people who could be deterred from smoking by high taxes had long ago been reached, and that little more benefit could be expected. The people who still buy cigarettes are dedicated smokers. Their preference for smoking overcomes the deterrent power of any levy. If these people are told to pay even more, they have a greater reason to buy smuggled cigarettes. Unfortunately, that led to enforcement escalation. The face of that escalation is Eric Garner, who was killed in a confrontation that began when police approached him on suspicion of selling loose, untaxed cigarettes. A vice tax policy championed by nanny state health advocates as a means of weaning Americans from the deadly consequences of smoking proves to have deadly consequences itself. Draw prohibition by another name. Jeffrey Singer, an Arizona-based surgeon and senior fellow at the Cato Institute, has a better idea. Instead of chasing bootleggers, drop the tax rate, he suggests. Jack up taxes high enough and it's just prohibition by another name. And prohibition always delivers the same package: black markets, corruption, and violence. That's good advice, but weaning nanny staters from their addiction to vice taxes may be harder than getting smokers to kick their nicotine habit.